Good afternoon, Intentional Living podcast fans. Marty Keller here in Sacramento, California, with John Donovan in Oceanside, California, and our very special guest, Duffy, coming to us from Connecticut. New Haven? Where are you?
West Haven.
West Haven.
Mm-hmm.
So is West Haven new or old compared to New Haven?
Um, that's a good question. Probably newer. It's on Long Island Sound,
Okay.
and I grew up in Milford, the next borough south. But West Haven has the distinction of having had the Savin Rock Amusement Park, kind of
Nice.
like Palisades Amusement Park.
Nice.
Swing all day and after dark. Yeah. Well,
Uh,
they got rid of that one.
Did you get to go as a kid?
I did go, I believe, once when I was 5 on the bumper cars and cried.
Oh, that sounds like an adult children of alcoholics metaphor right there.
Yeah, and I'm still in the bumper cars and I'm still crying.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. Are you close to the water where you are?
I grew up in Point Beach, which was a block away, and right now, yeah, I found this tiny little shack that's one up from the house in front of the water. So they take all the storms for me, and I just sit back here in the catbird seat,
Nice.
loving life.
Nice. What's your weather today?
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. It's 75.
Ooh,
Yeah, no humidity.
nice. Very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Here in California, we're coming to the end of our mammoth heat wave. It's been over 110 degrees pretty much every day this week. It's only 102 right now here in Sacramento. And I understand, John, you guys got some rain coming in.
we had it all day today. We
You
catching
do?
the front end
Yeah.
of a tropical storm that
Cool.
hit northern Mexico.
So is it cooling things off?
A bit, and it's humid. It's a warm storm. It's
Ah.
still like 75, 78, sweltering 78.
Oh,
So
nice.
you guys are burning it up there in California, huh? Accountability tree and
Our tree never burns.
all stuff.
Well, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is a podcast to take a look at the intentional living process that John Donovan developed a number of years ago and continues to refine through working it. And it involves a practice that we call accountability practice, which essentially is my ability to account for the truth of what's going on in my day-to-day experience, and particularly those things that feel difficult. It's a way for me to find out what I want in my life, and by going after the things that are preventing me from having the things that I want. And from time to time, we have guests on this podcast. And today we're very happy that Duffy's joined us all the way from the East Coast. And so first thing I'd like to just ask to help, especially people that are watching for the first time, orient themselves to what we're doing here is, how have you gotten involved in intentional living and the accountability practice? What got you here?
What got me here? I was thinking that may be a question for me, and what came to me was, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I feel as though I've had angels appearing to me throughout my entire life, but I wasn't ready. I did grow up in a family where I had an alcoholic mother and an absentee father. So that manifested a lot of worth issues for me along the way. And I bumped up against a worth issue in my life at the age of 57, 6 years ago. And I could not wrap my mind around it. I couldn't get out of it. And I tried everything. I tried all my spiritual practices, my recovery practices, everything my athletic practices, everything, nothing was working. And I put together an action plan. And my action plan was specifically things that I historically was not willing to do or didn't think I needed, or was gonna do, but not right now. On that road, I ended up asking a woman to journey with me. Just found her on Zoom, picked her out one night, said, all right, I don't want to journey with someone. I don't want to be vulnerable with someone. That family of origin, don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. Oh, that probably is tattooed on my astrobulus. But I did, because I knew that that was something I wasn't willing to do. And she actually led me to John. And I called him up, and I remember that day, and you sounded to me, John, like a tough guy. And I thought to myself, I don't know about this. I mean, really, really? And then that action plan said, really, go ahead and explore this. And here I am, I believe it's 3 years, 2.5, 3 years later, and my life is profoundly different.
Yeah.
That particular area that I bumped up against, I came to realize was family of origin dysfunction, childhood trauma, belief system that I carried and kept finding it to remind myself that, okay, that's unsafe. So yeah, and it's been a fun journey. I took the course, John's class, and you were there too, Marty. Marty, we were in the inaugural class, and that was interesting. What I thought that class was going to do was teach me how to do the accountability training. What I realized was that I could learn the accountability tree in a weekend, but I need to practice it the rest of my life.
Right.
And I found after 13 Fridays in a row, I realized that what I do is I withhold. I withhold from myself, from others. I disconnect. And so that's how I found John and Marty and the other fellow tree climbers.
I like that metaphor.
Yeah. So thank you for the, again, keeping in mind that there are people watching this for the first time, or there's people that are have come across this just like you did once upon a time for the first time, and I did many years ago for the first time. We even have somebody that's watching the podcast in order from the beginning, John. So what was it about the practice? Because your first response I heard you say was that John was like the big bad bear or something. What was it that brought you in and opened you up? What was the process that brought you in and opened you up to being willing to do the work, being willing to take a hard look at that energy that we call the family of origin dysfunction, childhood trauma?
That's a good question. I don't really have an answer for that, other than there was something that I was curious about. I know that I had tried everything I knew, and what initially we talked about, I've learned that trauma has a focus, and it wants to talk about it. So I spent a few sessions talking to John about the story.
Right.
I didn't even know that there was a story. I thought that was a good indication that I was, should be a certain way, and that's uncomfortable, and that other person is perpetrating discomfort on me. So I started thinking, the story, and John said, "Have you told that story before?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's always the same story. That I'm not valued, I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard, and it's on a real core level." And growing up with an alcoholic parent, I wasn't seen and I wasn't heard. And that's when I started to make a connection that, oh, so I'm telling a story about what happened. And then I don't know. This is the funny part. This was the part that hooked me in. I was something had happened, and I was telling the story about it, but the story was a little different, and I wanted John to know that, okay, so this is what it looks like, John. This is what this person does, and they did it. That's what it looked like. And then someone else came in, and then they stopped doing it, but they were nice to. And John used a voice that I today fondly remember as a voice he may have used in Folsom State Prison. And he said, Duffy, is this person coming at you with a knife? And I said, no. And he goes, then it's you. That was my moment of clarity. That was probably when the pain was equal to or greater than the message that created it. I hit we call it a bottom in some areas of our lives, oh my God, I hit a bottom. It's really an opportunity if I look at it that way. So moving forward from there, I saw the accountability tree differently. I saw that that story has my pain in it, and it will lead me to my wound if I allow it.
Mm-hmm.
So at first I had issues with, I don't. So I see somebody that's indifferent and a fraud to me. Well, I'm supposed to own my truth that I carry that. I'm indifferent. I'm a fraud. And that took a while. That took a while to embrace that concept, because I spent my life trying not to be that person,
Me too.
So, yeah. So I started working on that, owning my truth, that I today am not a fraud or a dismissive person, but I was exposed to it. I was it at one point in my life, and I certainly grew up with it.
Mhm.
So that gave me an opportunity to look at that belief system and then feel what it feels like today that I didn't feel as a child. So I think the coming at me with a knife is what got my attention. But it felt like this person was.
Yeah.
It did. It felt like this person was. Yesterday, John asked me to participate more in the accountability tree with people. He had asked me to do this podcast when I had cleverly sidestepped it. Everybody in the class did the podcast. I did not. No. And I thought that was good enough. You guys would leave, he wouldn't come after me again. And you did. And I said to John yesterday, first thing he said, would you be willing to take on mentor women in the accountability tree? And I said, you're killing me.
Is that a yes or a no? I'm not sure.
I said, you're killing me. And he goes, now remember, Duffy, you have a choice. Yes, no, maybe, or get the F out of here. My choice was get the F out of here. And I found myself saying yes, but I had questions.
Oh, cool. Very good.
That's the difference that I find today. I can't explain it.
I had a similar experience when I was finishing up my battery re-education class, that I took my 52-week class to learn how to talk to people without using emotional or physical violence. At the end of the class, the facilitator got a contract at Sacramento County Jail. And he asked me, would you like to come in and facilitate? Well, in my mind, I said, get the F out of here. And I saw myself saying, okay. And it was like, oh my God, what did I just do? And here I am. See, part of what you're talking about is the guy coming at you with a knife. If somebody is dismissive would you call him, would you say he was, what's your projection towards him, Duffy? He was,
entitled, fraud.
well, if he is rude, or I don't remember the phrase you used.
Dismissive, I think, was what you were going for.
Dismissive. And your response is, wow, that's dismissive. I'm not going to put up with this, and became proactive. But as family of origin dysfunction, childhood trauma, subconscious pull of information, we have to fix that instead of be proactive about that, which is, that hurt. I'm going to stay away from this. I'm going to move. I'm going to say, please don't do that to me. That's hurtful. Or I'm going to be proactive. And when we get into the story again and again and again, we don't have that ability to be proactive, where we want the other person to change so that I can feel okay, when the truth is they are the way they are. And what do I want, which is what you got to. Okay. And the way I got to it was by owning all the projections that I had on the judgments I had on people, like arrogant, entitled, bully, and owned them. And now if I come up with somebody that's arrogant, and the world's full of arrogant, entitled, bully, I simply hold a boundary. I don't take it personally anymore, because what they're doing is not personal. And I learned through my accountability practice how to be proactive in my life. At any moment I have a choice to either move closer, move away, or say something different, or I have choice. Where before I had to fix it. I had to get them to see that they were doing to me. Look what you're doing. How could you do this to me, when they're in their own world dysfunction, not even aware of me, pretty much, and projecting onto me. And so there's two people in the room, each one of them with a wounded child. So in that conversation, there's four people, and nobody knows it.
Busy.
And now I'm having a conversation with people in my authentic self. And one of the things I want to say about what I learned about setting a boundary is simply where I end and they start. My boundary, my physical boundary, is my body. My emotional boundary is a bit bigger, and my spiritual boundary is a bit bigger. And I know who that is, so I can set clear boundaries. I can let people see who I am, which enables them to make a choice whether they want to move closer or move away. So, yeah, thank you. So
one of the things that I heard you say, you were contrasting the experience with having choice versus not having choice. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit on how it is that we are in a position where we don't feel like we have choice, that we're just, like you were talking about the story, and in being stuck to my story, I'm not really free to take responsibility for myself. So what's going on? How does that lack of freedom come about?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm asking if you can elaborate on that.
Almost want you to ask it again. Ask it again if you can.
Yeah. So when I do the accountability practice, I learn to become free to make my own choices. You were describing your boundaries, and
okay, yeah.
So right. You're free to ask somebody to back away.
Yeah.
Whereas before you had that breakthrough where you became accountable for yourself, you may have had choice, but it felt like compulsion.
Right.
And so just help us understand, how does that come out of my childhood trauma?
In my family of origin dysfunction and childhood trauma, what I was told is that I made my parents frustrated, angry, hurt, upset. I was a burden. So what that taught me is that I have the power to make somebody else feel something. When the truth is, the power I have is impact. I do impact the people around me. Their choice of feeling is their own. If that's true, then my choice of feeling is based on my experience. The experience I had before my accountability practice was they're upsetting me, they're intruding on my space, they're rude. And I had two choices. For me, it was knock them out or walk away. Either hit it or leave it. And those were the two choices I had in my relationships. I would either be emotionally, verbally, or sometimes physically violent, which is hit it, or I would leave the relationship, or I'd walk out of the situation. I'd leave the situation. Those are my two choices coming from the conditioning as a child. In my willingness and ability to be accountable for my behaviors, which were motivated from trauma, which is two choices, hit it or leave it. I discovered that in between those two choices, there was a myriad of things I could do, say, act, that were proactive for my own well-being. I could take my own well-being into my hands. I didn't have to wait for somebody else to care for me. So that's simply saying, that's moving from reactive, hit it or leave it, to proactive. And in the proaction, there's a myriad of choices, a myriad of options that I have in any given moment. One instance where somebody says something specific, I could choose to move away. Another one, I could choose to stay and listen. I don't know. I don't know what the action is going to be, but I do know that I have choice. And in the accountability tree, accountability, no blame, no judgment, my truth, emotion, I intend, that's where they own the projection, feel the truth of mean to the point of cruelty. I intend to be kind. Well, on the sides, on one side it says power, on the other side it says choice. Well, those two things were not open to me in my dysfunction. I had to fix the outside situation in order for me to feel safe. Now I know I have power, and that power is in the amount of choices I have at any given moment. Somebody being aggressive, I could choose to listen with compassion, or I could choose to say, you know what, this is going too far, whatever. And I have choice. I have options in any given moment. So, which I didn't have before I learned that the things I got upset with in other people were things that were unresolved issues in myself. Like somebody lied to me. That was I told her, but don't lie to me, because if you lie to me, I'm out of here. I don't take a lie. Well, guess what? I'm a liar. Not just lie. I lie just because I want to. I don't even have to, and I find myself lying. And I wonder at my actions. Now I know that as a child, it was a good idea to lie, not to tell the truth, because there was punitive punishment for telling the truth. They weren't asking me, how do I feel? What do I need? They were saying, did you do that? So they could pick out the line of punishment that deserves. So yeah, I'm a liar. I lie. I'll lie out my ass if I have to. Now, since I've owned it, somebody lies to me, I see their struggle. I see their pain. I see, oh my God, that makes sense to me why you would say that. And I can compassionately address, especially in a group setting, what's going on, and offer the person some kind of relief from a compassionate, non-judgmental, non-blaming place.
It's it struck me as you were sharing that there's got to be a relationship between this sense of compulsion, where I have no freedom to do anything but respond to the compulsions that are already established within me, and the first step of the 12-step process. Like the first step in AA I found that I was completely powerless over the effects of alcohol, and my life had become unmanageable.
Right.
Seems that those things are related.
They are. I'm not putting that together, Marty, the way.
Well, it's related to powerlessness. So
Oh.
powerlessness equals no
Oh,
choice.
okay. So in my trauma as a child, I was chastised for laughing too loud. So if I controlled my laughing, I wouldn't get punished. Well, that didn't happen. I just got punished for something else. So I learned to stuff my feeling tone, my life force, my joy, and be watchful to make sure everybody was okay. If somebody raised an eyebrow in a room, I would be alert, because in my childhood, somebody raised an eyebrow and I either got a back of a hand, or I got sent to my room, or I got ridiculed and humiliated. So that's hooked into the midbrain brainstem, is where our survival complex is. So for me to survive my childhood, shut down my emotions, don't be available, don't be proactive, be reactive. So when I get in a situation as an adult, this old memory comes up, because my subconscious mind can peruse my entire experience at about 3.2 seconds flat. And if raised eyebrows in there, it says shut down, go away. I shut down, go away, no matter what I think I want to do. And I would watch myself do something and go, what are you doing? And I could not stop. The trauma is a survival mechanism, hooked into the survival mechanism, fight, flight, freeze. And the information in there is dedicated to my safety. And if somebody raises an eyebrow, I need to shut down. So I would freeze in the middle of a group, somebody telling a joke, I would freeze. And then people look at me like, what are you doing? Well, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm reacting to an old trauma. I'm living in the past as if it were right here, right now. In my capacity to own, I'm mean to the point of cruelty with no blame or judgment, or a projection. If I project it onto somebody, well, what's coming up for me is that person's a bully. Well, if I own I'm a bully, that truth is in alignment with the trauma. It validates this mechanism that's trying to keep me safe by me being aggressive and big and boisterous and intrusive. And it goes, oh, I'm so glad you're listening to me, which is really counterintuitive. It's like, what just happened? I'm a bully. Take a breath. I intend to be kind. Reframed the information that the fight, flight, freeze mechanism is motivated by. So now I see a bully. I've owned my bully. I have choice, because this mechanism got me hit it or leave it. That was the solution. And I was stuck in that. No matter what I thought was a good idea, I would either hit it or leave it. Now I have options, because there's more information about, I've nurtured my pain. I've nurtured my trauma. If I say I'm mean to the point of cruelty, there's something that happens that validates the pain, validates the incident, that event that created the meanness. And I breathe and I go, I intend to be kind. That truth, there's a frequency raise of awareness. I intend to be kind, fuses with that energy, drops back down into my subconscious, reframed. So now I have an option. I have something in there that I can go to, peruse my entire experience, and go, oh, there's let's try this. And this is still below my consciousness. So I will be in a situation and somebody will say, wow, John, that was kind. And I'll go, oh yeah, it was. It's still coming out of my subconscious. But now I'm aware, pay attention to what's in there. If I own the truth of where I find myself, that tells me what's in there, means the point of cruelty, is my intent to be kind. Now I'm operating with new information. And the mechanism is our creative mechanism, which now all of my input is filtered through this, and it's got kindness in it. So I'm different and I respond different. It's automatic. It's amazing. Amazing. And the more I do this accountability process, the bigger that pool of information becomes rich and rife with concepts of compassion, kindness, nurturing, loving, because that's what I intend. I intend to be a loving, caring, nurturing spouse, father, participant in my community. This man goes, yes, we'll work that out for you. we'll find, and then I'll see it now. An example of this is I came home one night in my recovery, and the question that was asked is, where the hell have you been? Well, this mechanism says, who the hell do you think you're talking to? You can't talk to me that way. I work hard. And I went into this defensive, aggressive mode. And then a couple of years later, something similar happened. And where have you been? And I go, oh, let me tell you where I've been. And what I saw standing in front of me wasn't the monster I saw 5 years ago. It was that thing I've been looking for all my life, somebody who cared about me and was interested in my well-being and was worried and concerned. And I just simply, well, let me answer the question and let me be accountable for not calling you because I changed my plans. It's, yeah, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So, and every time I'm accountable, every time anybody's accountable, it adds to this pool of information that directs this survival mechanism to include more life, enriching life, fulfilling. And everything anybody says to me now is a validation, especially, John, you're an arrogant asshole. And I go, yeah, I know. I'm working on that one for a long time. And I can still stay in my compassion and my awareness and be there for somebody. So,
Just to like to add something we talked about on this podcast previously, that when we're reconfiguring that subconscious pool of information, as you put it, it's not disembodied. We're actually also rewiring the brain so that the physical mechanism that supports our emotional and intellectual activity is moving toward the capacity to produce that which we intend to produce versus what we had felt compelled to produce before we had this information, before we could have these choices.
correct.
So, for example, I find myself now when a judgment comes up, and it still comes up, who does that person think she is, or that kind of stuff. I have something that comes right after that, which is, hey, you're doing a judgment. Is this what you want?
Correct.
That never existed before. That got created through a process, and I want to talk to Duffy about this idea of not knowing in a minute. So I don't know how that happened. I know it happened because the results are being produced in real time. So I have a judgment. In the old days, I would get adrenaline rush. I'd get angry. I'd get into fight or flight, depending on what the situation was. Now it's like I have the judgment, and then I have a voice that goes, "Is this what we want? Is this true?" And that's now as automatic as the other one was automatic. So I just suggest that part of the way this process works is because the brain, we know that the brain is plastic. That means it can be reconfigured. And that this intentional work that we do really has it's an accelerant to that reconfiguration. And there's something we haven't explored this in a while, John, and maybe we can do this a little bit today or on one of the future podcasts. There's something about how intention works in the rewiring process.
Right.
But there is something about Duffy. We were talking about this before we started the recording. There's something about not knowing that you've been working on, and this might be a good time to ask you what have you been working with or thinking about with respect to not thinking or not knowing.
Wow. Well, I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I'm thinking, what a privilege and an honor to be able to, have these kinds of dialogues, particularly with both of you. And it is fun. Marty said, "Oh, my intention before the podcast is to have fun," and I'm thinking mine is to get it over with and go.
Yeah.
But
Well, you can have that too.
yeah, but I know, I'm like, yeah. And today I made an intention to continue to not know. When I try to know or think I know, I'm not expanding. I don't feel like I'm creating. And what the accountability process has offered me is freedom of self-defeating thoughts that are there because they think I need them to be safe. So just to jumping off on what, John, you were talking about boundaries, and I remember hearing a boundary is me pulling another person closer to me so I can see myself.
Yeah. Wow.
That was it. That kept me coming. I'm like, well, and it took me a while to understand that. And the life happens for me, not to me. I heard that, but I started to attach life happens for me, not to me, with not knowing. I don't know. I don't know how life is unfolding for me.
No.
If I did, you know what, heaven knows where I would be. I think we all would have figured that one out.
Yeah.
So then that led me to, well, how do I know what's happening? When I'm in my zone, when I'm participating in athletics or watching or coaching and I lose track of time, I'm in this place that I'm in my essence. Oh man, I don't know. I walk away thinking, wow, I felt that was unbelievable. But then there are other times where I find myself emotionally distraught. And the 4 constants of the relationship that are part of this process, one is focus, attention. All right. So if I don't have a focus for what I want, that life happens for me, not to me, then my life will have a focus from my subconscious information.
Yep.
The second one is where I really find the most growth and healing is own my projections. Okay, so you spot it, you got it. Or the classic one, oh, I just got triggered by that. And I thought, yeah, I don't want to be triggered. I don't want to have a gun triggering me to begin to love myself and validate myself. So I changed it to an invitation.
Yes.
So today, when I see something that makes me feel happy, joyous, and free, or when I see something that makes me feel like I have no value and there's no hope, I look at it as an invitation. So that's an invitation for me to look at my wound, the information that's driving this. And that's where the truth on the accountability truth is. Find my truth, my emotions, and then an intention. What do I want? Getting to that part, which is clearly in the beginning with no blame or judgment, I have to accept that it's an invitation for me. And I remember walking on the beach, something had happened, and I was, practicing life happens for me, not to me. And I'm like, yeah, there's no way that this could be for me. And I heard in myself, you can't have it both ways. You can't be half pregnant, Duffy. You either life happens for you all the time, or it just doesn't, and take your chances. So I made a decision all right, fine, then this happened for me. I practiced that, and then I would start to see that, wow, that person is representing a pain I had growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I, right now, just even, I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
So I'm in that place. I'm in my truth. I'm in my emotions. And like you were saying, John, things open up for me now to add to it. I'm not going to change it. I learned that. We use the term reframe. And I remember, well, I thought we weren't going to be able to change it. So isn't reframing changing it? And everyone was so eloquent in how they described that. You're adding to it.
Yeah.
You're adding what you want to it with my asking myself, what do I want? Creating an intention, which is I think it's a directive right to my heart. It's an arrow to my heart, is an intention. It's the universe and my heart. It's different than an affirmation, which I was told is like sprinkles on poop. And I thought, you'll get there, but it'll take a long time. And I find myself with intentions, like sometimes not being able to say it. And it makes sense why I wouldn't be able to. I'm in a place that's there to keep me alive. Now I'm telling it the opposite. So I was able to, Ruben had a great thought on this. I don't have to articulate an intention. My body knows. I'm in it. I know what I created to keep me safe. My body also knows how to create my fulfillment.
Yeah.
And then there I am, owning my projection, moving. And the third one on the 4 constants is move towards your pain. That's looking at it. That's looking at the wound. Wow. And I find the women I mentor or work with, that's a challenging spot to say out loud what's really happening, not what you think is happening.
Right.
And then I intend, but yeah, and I don't know. What did you guys say? Are you willing to not know, look foolish, or fail and be wrong?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And when you first said that, I'm thinking, oh, here we go again. What else? What else? But I experienced a measure of freedom that I kept moving towards. Now I find myself not knowing, and I feel, thank heavens I don't know. I didn't prepare. A couple of weeks ago, I'm thinking, all right, what am I going to talk about? Have some notes you can refer to so you can sound smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? And then what? I have to maintain smart. That's impossible. Someone's going to find out. Oh, wow. But yeah.
Yeah, the whether anyone's going to find me smart or not is not up to me.
Do you fellas find yourself keeping score these days, or is that game over?
That game's over.
It is, right?
I keep the score sheet. John doesn't know this.
Oh. And I see it in the universe around me now. My internal dialogue shifted.
Yep.
And then my external reality shifted.
Just like that.
Huh.
And they're doing exactly the same things that they've always done. And I think, wow, yeah.
Oh my God.
That looks like a pain.
I remember early on, John, when you were facilitating our men's group when we first met many, many years ago, and you would say something to the effect of what I heard Duffy just say, like, when we change our relationship with ourselves and with the issue that we think is coming from out there, you'll be surprised how people change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember we would sit there and people would argue. It's like, no, this goes to Duffy's not knowing. I don't know how that works.
Right.
But it does. And we can indicate what we think is going on, and that's fun. But it's not necessary to know.
Right. It's profound to experience, and experience adds to me. Everything that's in my subconscious pool of information came there through a frequency avenue, through an emotional feeling state. And then my head got involved and meddled with it and said, that's you, it's my judgment, my blame. And now that doesn't happen. Especially when I'm facilitating right now in this moment, I'm not thinking. I find myself acting from my subconscious pool of information. And if I find myself, like it could happen that I'm in a judgment of something right now, oh, there it is. There's an opportunity for me to go, okay, I'm this, whatever I judge. My vein is merging on the freeway. I have plenty of judgment about, so I have plenty of opportunity because I drive the freeway every day to learn about myself and my judgment of how people merge and my need to control. And if you just do this, it'd be okay and there wouldn't be a traffic jam. So I that happens for me, and I'm become a safe driver and enjoy my ride. I enjoy my life where I used to be beside myself with anger or resentment or bitterness about railing at, as Eckhart Tolle says, railing at reality. This is the way, now I see it as the way it is. What do I want? What do I want in this moment? I want to learn and grow. I want to become more compassionate. I want to be kind and generous. I want to be a safe driver.
Well, and the thing that's true is that we can do all the things that you just said, and we can still get in an accident.
And
And then we get to choose all over again. Is this life happening for me, or is this happening to me? And what I've discovered in doing this work is that I'm likely, because I've had this happen, an accident will happen, and my attitude is, this just happened. What do I want to do here? As opposed to, you fucker, how, the old way of bursting into rage, which is a cover up for fear. Like that. I'm not saying that never happens, but it doesn't happen by itself anymore. There's always this other energetic response at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Just
it's a miracle.
Yeah, it's a miracle. Yeah. The knowing I'm doing it. The other day in my neighborhood, there was a discussion about how to position something. And I knew that there were strong personalities that wanted, I have a strong personality. I thought it could go that way. That would be fine. No, they wanted it that way. So we agreed on it being this way. Okay. That was good. I went in the house, do my thing, whatever I do. I wake up the next day and that particular thing was positioned the way somebody wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the way we agreed on it. I knew that if I went over and put it back to the way we agreed on it, I would be engaged in my my belief system that I'm not wrong. Don't take advantage of me. This is what we decided. My mother, you said you were going to cook. The whole thing, I was there. I found myself moving that bench again.
Mm-hmm.
I came in the house and I said, okay, you were doing it. I took it to the account. I owned my truth.
Yeah.
I said, well, that's about your value. It's not about the bench. And I felt it. And I said, all right, okay. So I was there in that belief of why I did it. And what did I want? I wanted peace in the valley. My intention was to have peace in the valley. And then I came in the house and I looked at that bench and I said, for the whole association, if anybody does something that we didn't agree on and it's not directly threatening my life, let them do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was an invitation for me to look at a piece of me that I was still carrying in my community. And I'm thinking, Now I can't wait for somebody to do it so I can see it. I can see how I practiced.
Yeah, yeah.
You know. I have a question. How did you, why a tree?
Oh, the accountability tree.
Yeah, why a tree?
Well,
I'm gonna let John answer this, but I want you to know, Duff, there's a whole podcast where he went into great detail on this a couple weeks ago,
Okay.
just so you know.
Well,
But go
then
ahead, John. Give
you
her
don't
give
have
her
to-
the 40,000 foot version, because we're running out of time here.
okay. At first, it just simply looked like a tree. It just looked like a tree. So I put accountability tree. I have an affinity to oak trees.
Okay.
So I just
While
had
you're
it-
talking, John, I'm gonna go find it so we can show people what you're talking about.
okay. And then as time was going on, I call it the accountability process. And then every once in a while I say tree. And then it dawned on me, this practice is giving me new life. So tree, oh my God, tree is like appropriate. Now the tree I'm thinking specifically about is the second tree in the Garden of Eden. We ate the apple of knowledge, or right and wrong. And then as they were walking out, the power to be put two angels in front of the tree leading back, the tree of life. So I have, now I'm so glad I made accountability tree, because every time I think of this process, I'm adding to my capacity for freedom. I'm going back to my original state. I'm growing spiritually. So now the tree has just tremendous like significance for me. And like everything on that tree, I like when this whole tree started, I was in a group, I don't know, 20 years ago, and I wrote accountability on the board because I wanted to talk about accountability to the guys. And they all just jumped up and said no, because they were already being accountable, and accountable to them was being punished. They were serving their time, they were accountable. And that's not what I meant. So then no judgment. And this whole tree developed over a period of time, years, to what it is now. And I've been gifted with mystical knowledge put in a practical form that everybody can use. It's like the mystery of why am I here? What am I doing? No longer has to be a mystery. I get to look at that. I get to own that. I get to own my value. If I'm value, there's something I'm doing here that is of value. And my feeling tone now is that I belong. I have purpose. I have meaning. I have people who love me. I have people I love. I have depth. I have something. In all these things I just said, I couldn't have articulated 20 years ago. What do you want? I want you off my ass. Oh, it's like I couldn't have articulated what I had, and this process, this accountability tree has brought me there. And I've added one more thing to it now. And below the intentional living, I put another arrow, and I put freedom. Then I got another arrow down below. So it was serendipitous and profound all at the same time. Now it's a concept. It's a process. It's and I want to tell as many people about it as I can in the shortest amount of time, because I see the benefit. In fact, my latest thing is I'm going to build me a tree house. I'm going to build me a tree house in the accountability tree. I'm going to live in there for a while.
I already have one.
There you go.
I'm in it. You fellas can climb on up.
Climb on up. So
Right
that's
there right there in West Haven.
Right there in West Haven.
Wow, cool.
Oh, yeah. It comes with me everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that one too. So what I do recommend that check out that podcast where John goes into this, and we had a whole conversation about it. And I just want to jump in and say that once you put that tree up there, you actually no longer own it. So when we were having this conversation, I had a whole completely different interpretation of the tree.
Yeah.
Based on my experience of it, based on writing it on a whiteboard many times in many meetings, because we used to meet in the church, so we had to erase it every time because some of the other meetings were coming in. So unlike John, you can keep yours up there permanently. But so yeah, it's and I bet you if someone asked you, Duffy, you might come up with your own explanation of the tree from your own experience and your own understanding of treeness.
Trees, yes.
Well, we're running out of time here, and so before we wrap up, Duffy, I just want to give you a shot to see if there's anything that you would like to share that you didn't get a chance to, or anything else on your heart that you'd like to share with people who are listening to this podcast.
Just that I've found the most growth in my life when I face areas where I feel vulnerable, and I persevere through them one small step at a time. This podcast was very challenging for me. And I feel like I don't know, what happened for me here this afternoon, but I feel as though I faced an area of my life where, and I talked about the beauty of what I do, and I will notice moving forward that my life is different. And I think, and I work with high school athletes, and we talk about stuff like that. We talk about, just keep going, embrace the process, and that's what I love about the accountability tree. It's a process. It's not there's no end to it, so wherever I find myself is where I find myself on any given day. And I just circle back, and the circling back is circling back to me. So I circle there, and it wasn't as scary as I thought. I have been burning fat all day long thinking about this thing. So
we must have done something wrong, John.
oh thank you very much for your
well, Duffy, thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little bit of your experience, and we'd love to have you back, because as you said, the process is endless. So next time you'll have learned some new stuff that you'll want to share or might want to share. So John, as always, we'd like to let you have the last word.
Absolute, here's what I came up with for me. Absolute vulnerability is absolute power. When I know I'm vulnerable, I'm alert and know how to keep myself safe. I'm aware and am actionable in my own best interest. If I don't know I'm vulnerable, then I usually lead with my head. And when somebody punches me in the head, I say, "Why did you punch me in the head?" And they said, "Well, you led with your head." It's like, so now I lead with my heart, vulnerable, and I'm less likely to get hurt, and I don't take things personal to boot. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Well, there's another whole podcast right there, John.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay. All right.
Thanks a lot. Duffy, thanks so much again for joining us from the East Coast. And John, as always, appreciate your wisdom and your experience. And so we'll say goodbye for this time, and we'll pick this up in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Thank
Love
you.
you.
Thanks,
Love you guys.
fellas.
Love you too.